Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Bill Lester here, and welcome to today's virtual plant clinic. I know that originally I was scheduled to have several guests on today, and it looks like I'm here all by myself because of the storm that came through last night. Hopefully, all of you made it through the storm just fine. I know that we have people that sometimes watch us from counties all across Florida. And I know that right now, the last I saw, the storm was up around Jacksonville, Duval County, what was left of it. I'm here in Spring Hill, Florida, in Hernando County, and we made it through just fine. I wasn't sure how many people would be without electricity today or without internet or wouldn't be able to join us. But I still wanted to go on, if nothing else, very shortly to share with everybody some of the different services that we offer at Extension. So hopefully next Thursday, we're going to be able to have BJ Jarvis, who is the County Extension Director in Citrus County, here with us. Chances are she has her hands full this morning because I believe the storm made landfall up around Cedar Key, which is just north of Citrus County. So hopefully everybody up there is okay. So I see that we do have a few people on here. So if you guys have any questions or comments or anything, please feel free to go ahead and type it in the chat box underneath the video, and we'll go ahead and share that. And even though it may be a small group today, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll do my very best to answer them. But I want to talk a little bit about what our extension office here in Hernando County has to offer. So for anybody who might be new to the area, or you've been watching these plant clinics and you're not really sure what we do other than going on Facebook Live and YouTube Live every Thursday morning, we do a lot. So if you have any questions, if you have any insects that you find on your plants or in your yard or maybe inside your house and you don't know what they are, you can catch the insect if you could do so safely and put it in a container. You're more than welcome to bring it by our office. And let me go ahead and pull up our contact information there and our phone number. Our office is closed today because of the storm, but we should be reopened Friday morning, and we're open normally Monday through Friday, 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. So if you have an insect or a plant problem or a sickly house plant or anything like that, feel free to bring it by our office in person. Emailing pictures is a great way for us to be able to identify and help you out with your problems without you actually having to come to our office during the day, during the week. So feel free to take several good, clear pictures, and you can email them to us. I'll go ahead and put my email address up there. You can email them to me directly. You can ask us through Facebook. We have people private messaging our Facebook page, so all those different ways are great. We ask that the best thing to do is, if it's a picture of a plant or a tree, get some close-up pictures and then walk a little ways back and get a picture of the entire tree or plant overall. It gives us a better idea of what exactly is happening with your plant or tree. So you can send us pictures and we could try to diagnose and figure out what your problem is from that. And I see at least one person is on here. Good morning, Cindy. How are you? Hopefully you made it through the storm okay last night. So, like I said, we can identify your questions and problems either over the phone or with good pictures. Something else that we offer at our office is soil testing. So we do not do the actual testing at our office. The samples are sent up to the soil testing lab at the University of Florida in Gainesville to be tested. And then what they do is they send the results back to you. And they also, if you're a Hernando County resident, send a copy of the results back to us. So if you live in Hernando County and you have a Hernando County address and you get a soil test done and you get the results back and you're looking at them and you have questions or you don't understand what on earth they're talking about, if you call us, we can pull up our copy of your soil test results and then go over with you what the results mean. Maybe you're putting in a new lawn, maybe you're trying to grow a certain type of plant, and your soil isn't ideal for it at this point, we can give you suggestions and ideas of what you could do to amend that soil to get it just right for whatever you're trying to grow. But if you contact our office or come by our office in person, we can give you all the information you need to send off for a soil test. So what we do have is the form that you have to fill out. We have little paper bags for you to put the soil test in. Depending on the size of your property, we can tell you how many samples you need to send off. For most residential homeowners, for a normal sized residential lot, you only need to send off one sample. And we tell people to go around your yard, get a little bucket, get a little trowel, and go around and take samples from a number of spots in your yard and throw the samples in the bucket, mix it up really well, and take your sample from it. That's going to give you a really good representative sample of what's happening with your soil. For people who live out in the country and have an acre or 5 acres or 20 acres, you're probably going to have to send off several samples, because if you have a large piece of property, let's say 10 acres, one area might have different types of soil than another area. High areas are a little bit different from low areas, from areas that drain well and maybe are a little bit swampy. So if you have questions about that, just contact us directly or stop by the office and we can help answer all those questions. So I see we have at least a few other people here. Cindy says, yes, she was fine and most of her plants are safe. That's great. I just walked around my yard a little while ago and all the plants and trees are fine. I think I lost a couple dead branches off one of the palm trees, which was fine. It saved me from having to break out the ladder and crawl up there and trim them. So I know a lot of people, when high winds and storms come through, it takes a lot of the dead branches and little twigs out of your trees. So you're going to have a little bit of cleanup. For anybody with large trees, you always want to plan on contacting a certified arborist probably once a year to come out and look at them. I know a lot of people have very, very large oak trees or maybe several large oak trees on your property. You really want to have an arborist look at them in person every year or so to determine whether you have any large dead branches that need to be removed, if the tree is healthy, if the tree is unhealthy, if it's starting to present a danger, because you don't want to find out that your large oak tree is not safe or healthy in the middle of the night, in the middle of a storm when the winds are blowing. And I know that we all can turn on the TV in the morning and see pictures of huge trees that have fallen on houses. A lot of that can be avoided with just a little bit of planning and contacting a professional board certified arborist to come out and actually look at them and give you advice on what exactly you should do to keep your trees safe. So Carol Ann's on here. Carol's one of our regulars. Good morning. How are you? And we have a question or a comment here. Carol says she's in Pinellas County near Gulfport. I'm sure you got a lot more wind and a lot more rain than I did. And my yard is littered with twigs and leaves, but no significant damage and no floodwaters. That's great. I feel very badly for people who live in areas that are prone to flooding. And of course, we all want to live right on the water. We want to be able to sit on our porch and look out over the Gulf of Mexico. The only problem is that when a tropical storm or hurricane comes, it's not necessarily the safest place to be. So I'm really happy to hear that you didn't suffer any significant damage. I honestly didn't see a whole lot on the TV this morning other than flooding in low-lying areas. And a lot of times, if your area is prone to flooding, you should already know that, and you should already have a plan in place about when you need to go stay with family or stay in a hotel or basically get out for your own safety. And, you know, a lot of times people pick a really, really beautiful spot to live with a great view, but it is prone to flooding. It might be very, very close to the water. So those are all pluses and minuses. Unfortunately, we got a great big minus that blew through last night. So, question here about, do you know a good place to get mulch or mulch in Hernando from Kimberly? No, I really don't specifically know or could recommend any one mulch yard to get it from. I do believe that there is a place along County Line Road, very, very close to Aventura Nursery, that's a mulch yard. If you're looking to get, a dump truck load brought to your house, or if you have a pickup truck and you want to go and get a half a yard or yard of mulch in your pickup truck and bring it home. If you need smaller amounts, a lot of time the big box stores are going to be as cheap as any place to go. They run the mulch on sale sometimes, so you really want to kind of watch for those sales and load up. If you're looking at having to get 20, 30, 40 bags for your yard, it can add up. So of course, save a little money and buy it on sale. But I also want to mention a few of the other things that we offer here at our office. We do have lots of free classes, and all those classes right now are online. So let me go ahead and show the website that you can go to. If you just go to Hernando Extension, all one word, .com, that is a full listing of all the different classes that we're offering through our office, and that's fed directly from Facebook Live. So as soon as we plan a class and put it on Facebook Live, it shows up automatically on that website. And if it's something that we're doing on Facebook Live, it tells you that and gives you a link and directions. If it's something that we're offering on Zoom, or if advanced registration is required, all that information is going to be right there. And all the classes that I offer, and Lily Browning, my regular co-host, who is the Hernando County Florida Friendly Landscape Coordinator, all of her classes are listed on there. We have other people in our office that do classes. Our County Extension Director, Jim Davis, does classes on a regular basis on different animal topics and natural resource topics. At our office, we do have a Sea Grant program, and our Sea Grant agent, Brittany, has classes on a regular basis. She also does a lot of programs as far as regular coastal cleanups, which a lot of them have been delayed because of COVID-19, but hopefully we're going to be able to bring back very soon. I know I always enjoy going out there and helping out with that. And it's great when we get a lot of people out there right over on our coast to go and pick up everything from papers and cups and beer cans, and they find tires, they find inflatable rafts, they find old toilets and fixtures. It's amazing what kind of things you could find littering our coastal areas. And it's great when we can have a lot of people go out there and get some fresh air and sunshine, get that all picked up. But if you have any questions about that, contact our office. Her name is Brittany Hall Scharf, and she's in charge of the Sea Grant program. We also, if you didn't already know, Extension is home to all the 4-H programs. So if you were in 4-H when you were a kid, or if you have small children now that you'd like to get involved in 4-H, just contact our office and we could put you in touch with Nancy, who is more than happy to answer all your questions about how to get involved in 4-H. And we also, if that wasn't enough, we do offer programs on financial literacy. We do have, on occasion, first-time homebuyer programs. We used to obviously have them in person for people. I believe that we're doing them online right now. So we have a lot of different programs to offer, a lot of different help, whatever your questions or problems might be. So please feel free to contact our office, or just tune in here Thursday mornings. And as long as I have electric and internet, I'll be on here. Thankfully, I didn't have any problems with that this morning. So Susan said, a nonprofit's looking for houseplants to give as gifts. They will go in 5 or 6 inch pots. We like to avoid invasive plants in case the recipients decide to plant them outside, which is very good because a lot of times, and it all depends on the plant, there are houseplants and things that you might receive as gifts for the holidays that you can plant out in your yard when the holidays are over. So that's a good idea. Looking for suggestions on something that's relatively easy to grow. Tolerance of part shade would be a plus. That's a big question. And we do have some resources. If you contact our office, we do have a book with a listing and pictures of all the different Florida-friendly landscape plants. It includes many native Florida plants and Florida-friendly plants, which are plants that are not native to Florida, but they're also not invasive, and they're going to grow well here, because we have a problem with people moving here from other states that want to grow what they grew there, and sometimes those plants are just not the best choice for here, and they don't do well here. So something for a house plant that would go in a 5 or 6 inch pot. Many of the different standard house plants are going to do well, and you can even put them outside on a back porch or out in your backyard in the summer. If you put them in a shady spot, they're going to do well in the summer. Most of them you have to bring in for the winter. So like I said, Susan, if you contact our office directly, we can get you a copy of that Florida Friendly Landscape book, and that has a good listing of like native lantana. Let me think of another one. Tropical sage does do really well. Any of the sages or tropical sages, some of which are Florida natives, but there's a lot of different varieties and cultivars of them. The standard red tropical sage does really, really well, whether you plant it in your garden outdoors or you try growing it in a pot. And the nice thing about it is it flowers a lot, gets very attractive small red flowers, and drops a lot of seeds. So it's going to keep reproducing and making more plants. If you just get one, you're really never going to have to get another one, because it drops so many seeds, and you have all those little baby plants that you could either leave or dig up and transplant somewhere else. So one suggestion right off the top of my head would be look at sages. They tend to stay reasonably small, or if they start to get too big, you can prune them back. That doesn't hurt them. They're just going to grow and thicken up even more. So Carol said that she just sent me an email with photos of the hibiscus plant that needs pruning but is still blooming. I'm waiting but hope to trim it back sooner than spring. Bad idea. That you can prune it right now. An issue that you may have, and I got your email. I got another email, and here's a picture. Oh, okay, I see. Let me go ahead and try to screen share here. So let's see if that is showing. There we go. There's Carol's hibiscus, and it's tucked right up against the house, which is good and bad because it is going to need some pruning. Otherwise, it's going to seriously outgrow its location. But tucked up there, it's going to stay warmer in the winter. So you're probably going to have fewer issues with it freezing. If it was out in the middle of your front yard and we had a freezing night, it would sustain a lot more damage than it would right there. So with that, you can prune it back a little bit. It looks like it only needs to be pruned back maybe a foot and a half to get it back to about the size that you'd want it to be. So it is safe to prune it back this time of year. The problem with that is every time you prune a plant like that, it's going to stimulate it to send out new shoots, and it's still, nice weather right now. So you may start to get some new growth on it that's going to be a lot more susceptible to freezing temperatures. So Carol, I can't remember, do you live in Hernando County, or do you live south of here or north of here? So that's going to kind of determine a little bit about whether you want to prune it right now or not. If you leave it for the winter, it's not going to grow a lot more. The growth is going to start to really slow down now. So if you leave it until spring, it's not going to be a whole lot larger than it is today. And like I said, it is safe to trim it back maybe a foot or so today. The only drawback is it's going to stimulate some new growth and make it want to try to grow a little bit more. And that new growth, if you do get a freeze, is going to be very susceptible to damage. So she lives in Poinciana, which is over in Osceola County, I believe, a little bit south of here, a little bit warmer. So you can trim the bottom also. You can trim the bottom couple branches to get a little bit more of a stem or a trunk look to it, but I wouldn't do any really dramatic pruning right now. If you feel, yeah, so she lives in Polk County. So if you feel that you need to trim it a little bit to get it a little bit more in the space that you're allowing for it, or to get it's starting to get a little out of control, you need to get back a little bit more under control. You can prune it lightly right now, but I wouldn't prune it dramatically, really, until spring. And whether you prune it right now or you don't, or whether it gets a little bit of freeze damage this winter or not, if you let it go, once we get up to early to mid-March and it doesn't look like you're going to have any more freezes or frosts there, you can do the drastic, dramatic pruning at that point and then let it go. I'm a big believer in those flowering bushes, trying to prune them just once a year and prune them back shorter than where you normally want them, and then just letting them go. You're going to get a lot more flowering all summer long that way. Because people who keep going out there once a month and prune it back just a little bit, couple inches, what you end up doing is pruning off a lot of those flower buds, and now you're not going to have nearly as many flowers as you would have if you just pruned it heavily in March and then let it go for the rest of the summer. So I see we have Phyllis here. Phyllis, I believe, is still up in Pennsylvania. So she completely avoided the tropical storm. She really likes our online classes. Thank you, Phyllis. That's great. She wanted to remind me to mention the Hernando County Master Gardener Nursery. Thank you for that. Our Master Gardeners here in Hernando County do have a nursery. If you're familiar with where the Hernando County fairgrounds are on State Road 41, our nursery is tucked right back behind it. It's on Oliver Street. Oliver Street runs right alongside of the fairgrounds and circles back behind the fairgrounds. Our Master Gardeners are there, and we are open on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 9 in the morning until noon. They just expanded the hours since the weather cooled off a little bit, so we're in our wintertime hours and open until noon. During the summer, they like to close at 11 because it's pretty hot by noon, and not too many people are out there shopping anyway. So we do have hibiscuses and a wide variety of either Florida-friendly plants or native plants. I think the last I heard, they had 20 different varieties of native plants. And we make sure that we do not have any invasives that we know of at the nursery. And we only sell plants that are going to do well in Hernando County in this area. So you don't have to worry too much about buying something that's too tropical or needs a whole lot of cold temperatures in the winter. We try to carry just plants that are going to be, good performers and real winners in your yard, and are not going to be super high maintenance, requiring a lot of pesticides and fertilizer and water, because we really want to discourage using too many resources out in your yard. So here's a good little bit of advice here from Kathy. For an accurate number of bags or truckload of mulch, if you go to www.mulchcalculator.com, and I've never been there before, if you enter the square footage and how thick you want it, it will do the math for you. So I know that's a real bonus. I could do the math if I had to, but for anything that you're trying to figure out, there's usually an online calculator for it anymore. The rule of thumb is 3 inches thick to keep the weeds away, and 3 inches is a good depth. Anything much deeper than that, and you're going to have issues with water getting through or water evaporating afterwards. She uses pond liner in place of weed fabric, so she gets 2 inches. So if you enter that information in there, so that's a really good suggestion. Thank you very much for sharing that. I'll have to write that down and remember. www.mulchcalculator.com. So I'm sure that you can punch in how thick you want it, and how many square feet you have, and it will tell you how much you need to go out and buy, whether it's by the bag or the pickup truckload or the dump truckload, depending on how big of a piece of property you have. And Phyllis is reminding me that we do have a wide variety of different sages at the Hernando County Master Gardener Nursery. They do have the red tropical sage. They have one called lipstick sage, and it's a slightly different variety. The little flowers are half red and half white, so it looks a little kind of multicolored peppermint. And my favorite is the very, very dark purple or almost black sage. And that's there's very few flowers that get flowers in that color. So it gives you, if you're looking for a really unusual accent color in your flowers, in your flower garden, or if you're looking for something just really unusual, black and white or black and red or dark purple and something and yellow, something like that, that's one of the few choices that you have that blooms in really, really dark purple or almost black. So Kathy's on here suggesting that with that hibiscus, move the hibiscus to a spot where it can grow so it's fullest, pruning is okay. Also, I tie mine in the early stages so it doesn't grow leggy. One thing with hibiscus, they do well in full sun or fairly shady areas, but the shadier the spot you put them in, the leggier it gets. The sunnier it is and the more you prune it, the fuller it's going to get. So yeah, they do get a little unattractive and gangly once they get leggy. And if they start to get leggy, that's when the branches can droop and flop a lot also. So the shorter you cut back anything, it's going to flourish ×2. So like I suggested, you want to do that major pruning in the spring once all the danger of freezes and frosts, depending on exactly where you live, are over. For me here in Hernando County, that's normally, if you're really in a hurry to get it done, early March, or definitely by late March is a very good time to just go out there and prune everything back and try to do that major pruning just once a year. Take all the prunings and all the trimmings, if you have a way of grinding them up, either a chipper shredder or by hand with your clippers, cut it up in little small pieces, or run it over with a lawnmower and bag it up or rake it up. That makes great compost ingredients also. So don't think that you have to send everything off to the landfill. Grinding it up and composting it works really well too. But try to do that big pruning in the early spring. And then after that, just prune off any dead branches, broken branches, the one gangly branch, if it's sticking out and blocking the front door sidewalk, obviously you have to prune it, but try to avoid going out there and just pruning it back a little bit all summer long. That can cause a lot of problems. Most of all, with the flowering bush, you're pruning off all the buds that are coming up, and then you're wondering, how come my hibiscus never flowers? It's because you keep cutting the blooms off. So Turk's Cap. Turk's Cap is a type or kind of a hibiscus relative. And Diana says hers is blooming like crazy right now. Yeah, I have a night blooming jasmine, and it just flowered like crazy not that long ago. Because we haven't gotten any serious cold weather yet to really kind of stop things or damage them or knock them back, you can have a lot of your different flowering plants and flowering bushes where they're just flowering like crazy right now. I think what made my night blooming jasmine flower like crazy was that little taste of cold weather we got. And the bush was probably thinking like, oh, I think winter's coming. I think it's going to start getting cold. We better flower right now while we can. So enjoy the blooms, enjoy the flowers right now. The longer it stays reasonably warm, the longer these things can flower. But usually at some point during the winter, we're going to get a really cold night or a frost or a freeze. It may not happen until December or January. So it all really depends on what kind of weather we get this winter. And keep in mind, it seems like every year is different. So Phyllis points out the butterflies and bees love the sages from the nursery. That is true. That is a very, very good choice for any kind of butterfly garden or native garden that you have going. Carol's pointing out there is a native plant sale at the USF Botanical Gardens on Saturday, sponsored by the Suncoast chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society. Thank you for sharing that. I know the botanical gardens down there have several plant sales each year. I'm really not sure exactly what is going on with them now because of COVID and also the storm. So you probably want to double check online to make sure they're still having it, and check the hours and make sure everything is going on before you hop in the car and make the drive there. But native plants are definitely a great way to go. They are always the lowest maintenance plants. They generally require the least amount of pruning and trimming and spraying with insecticides and fertilizing and watering. Nice thing about native plants that are well adapted to your area, whatever part of Florida you live in, and whether you're in a pine sandhill area or the soil's a little bit thicker like it is in downtown Brooksville, you're in a hardwood area, maybe you live very, very close to the coast. If you find native plants that are well adapted to that area, they usually require very, very little or no additional irrigation. So that's great. You don't have to turn on the water. You don't have to drag out, sprinklers and watering cans. You just plant it, water it well until it gets established. Then after that, let it go, let it be. I've had things like patches of coonties in my yard before and other native plants. And it is fantastic for a true lazy gardener because you really don't have to do anything to it, and it's going to grow and flower and reproduce and spread and provide food and shelter for native insects, native animals, all on its own without a whole lot of time and expense from you. So Kathy says, if anybody wants palm trees delivered and installed, I have it. Sylvester with diamond cut, queens, Bismarcks, rubies, and many others. You need to be very careful because we have people from all over Florida here. Double check and make sure that whatever kind of palm you're thinking about installing is going to do well in your specific neighborhood or area where you live. So with some of these, I have Sylvester palms in my yard, and they are very cold tolerant. They'll grow well north of Hernando County, all the way up into North Florida. They're going to do fine. Queen palms, we have lots of them in Hernando County and all over Central Florida. But believe it or not, every 20 or 30 years, we tend to get really devastating cold fronts and freezes. And they can actually kill queen palms because technically Hernando County is a little bit too far north for queen palms, but it only happens every 20, 30 years. And queen palms are very fast growing. So you can have a queen. I have one in my front yard, and it's becoming very, very tall. And I know that one day it may freeze and die, so it may not last forever. So keep that in mind. The queen palms are not the most cold tolerant. What else? Bismarck palms. I love Bismarck palms. They are my favorite palm tree. And there are several growing in my neighborhood that are beautiful and seem to be healthy and doing very well. But we are technically too far north for them. They could freeze and either get a lot of damage or die being here in Hernando County. But if we have, a number of fairly warm winters in a row, or it's planted in a warm spot, tucked up close to the house, in a spot in the yard where it's going to be somewhat protected, a little microclimate, they may do really well for many, many years. So you want to know that in advance and kind of put it in your planning, knowing that when it's young, it might need cold protection. You may need to think long and hard about exactly where in your yard you're going to place it. I know that it was the last winter or the year before, I saw a lot of Robolini palms seriously damaged because that's another one that's not really cold tolerant. But I have a Robolini and it's tucked right up near the front door, and it did not get any damage at all. I saw a few other people who had Robolinis out in the middle of their front yard, out in the wide open, and when it got really, really cold, they were heavily damaged. Like all the foliage had to be pruned off, and that really, really knocks them back quite a bit before they're able to, regrow and start to look good again. So these are all things that you just want to keep in mind. So, if you live in Hernando County, plant a Bismarck. I think it's a beautiful palm. One day I'm going to put one in my yard, but know that it is not necessarily the most cold tolerant. So Phyllis points out that hibiscus that are not pruned hard once a year get leggy and are very susceptible to wind damage, breaking off those long branches. Yes, that's very good advice. So once a year, reasonably hard pruning is going to make the branches and the whole form a lot fuller and thicker, and you're not going to have the really, really long, skinny branches that are going to get damaged. And Diana, yeah, night blooming jasmine is one of my favorites, and I make sure that wherever we live, I plant one because it's my wife's favorite also. She really likes the smell during the summer when they bloom. And if you have one when it blooms, the whole neighborhood is going to know it and smell it. So the scent really travels. So Phyllis said they had a hard freeze in late January 2019, close to Hernando County. So yeah, some people are kind of lulled into thinking that it doesn't get all that cold here. But here in Hernando County, whether it be Spring Hill or Brooksville, it can get down in the teens for a number of hours overnight. Doesn't happen every year, but it can happen. So something that you want to kind of keep in mind. And Susan shared the link here. I assume that if you're following on Facebook, that's going to be a live link. So go ahead and check that out. And like I said, double check to make sure that they are still having it. I wouldn't think that anybody really had enough storm damage to have canceled anything. I know a lot of things, schools are closed and our office is closed today, but I think that most everything's going to be back open and going again by tomorrow. So Phyllis said it got to 28 degrees. Oh, I've seen it get much, much colder than that. It can get down into the teens here. I used to live in the greater Orlando area, which is almost just generally due east of here. And sure, we have winters. And like I said, it doesn't happen very often, but we do get really, really cold weather on rare occasion. So Kathy said, agrees that Bismarcks are beautiful. Just installed one in North Florida, and so far so good. Wrapping a blanket around it to keep it warm. And she agrees that not every palm is right for your area, so you need to University of Florida has tons of really good information on that about what palm trees are going to do well in what areas. You need to think, do I want one that I'm never going to have to really mess with because it's so well adapted to my area that it's going to be very, very low maintenance? You can plant things. I have neighbors that have Bismarcks, they have queen palms, they have lots of other, I know a couple years ago, foxtail palms became popular in this area, and foxtail palms are not cold tolerant at all. They are beautiful down in the Miami area, but Hernando County is not Miami. So I think people who planted them, they probably didn't do well. So I really don't see many of them in people's yards. But sure, you can experiment, you can get adventurous, and you can plant things that are more tropical than what are going to do well here in Hernando County. And if you have a plan and a way to keep them warm on those couple of cold nights we have, you may do very, very well with them. So here's a question. Linda has 6 live oaks in an island. How far away should I make my driveway to protect their root system? That's a good question. I would go, depends on how large those live oaks are. And the problem is live oaks can live for a long time. And over the years, they continue to get bigger. The root system gets bigger. I'm sure everybody has seen in older neighborhoods, you have oak trees that over the years have gotten very large, and they pop up sidewalks, they pop up driveways, they start to damage the road, and that just shows that was kind of poor planning. They should have planned better when they put that oak tree in when it was little. I know if you put concrete or a driveway within about 10 feet of oak trees, it will pop years down the road. I've had to work with subdivisions where they put oak trees in that little strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street, and 10 years later, everybody's sidewalk is popping up, and that becomes very, very expensive to deal with. I would go as far as is practically possible. Personally, I would allow a good 20 feet, but that's all going to depend on where your options are to put in a driveway. So keep in mind, anything, if you put something in close by, 5-10 feet, it's going to pop eventually. It may take 10 years for it to happen, but that sidewalk, that driveway is going to be damaged by the roots eventually. And Sean has a suggestion here. Good morning, Sean. How are you? Hopefully you made it through the storm okay. If you cut a branch of night blooming jasmine, place in a dark room, the scent will last throughout the day. That's a good suggestion. It does work well as a cut flower, and it's not necessarily the prettiest. It's not, as big and colorful as a rose or hibiscus, but it will fill your house with that wonderful scent also. Have Kathy asking about the wine color hibiscus. There is so much breeding that's been done with hibiscus and so many different named varieties and cultivars. There are just huge number of options with hibiscus. If you start looking online through catalogs, or if you go to a nursery that has a really wide variety of them, they have a huge choice of different colors. So yeah, definitely go out there and plant more hibiscus. You may want to wait until spring, because who knows exactly what the weather is going to bring over the next few months. Because even Sean points out he's seen a low of 19 degrees in Hernando. And I have also, like I said, doesn't happen every year. And we can go a few years where it's a relatively warm winter. And then everybody who's new to the area starts to think like, well, it never gets really cold here in Hernando. Yeah, it can. And Kathy's a big supporter of 4-H. Like I said, if you have any questions about 4-H, or you want to, you have a child that you want to get involved in 4-H here in Hernando County, please contact our office, and I'll go ahead and show that phone number once again. And we're happy to put you in touch with our 4-H agent, Nancy Moores, and she can tell you everything that you want to know about getting involved in 4-H. It's a great program to have the kiddos involved in. Ideally, it gets them outside and active, a little away from the TV, away from the video games, although unfortunately it's had to change and adapt a little bit because of COVID-19, like all of us have. So yeah, foxtail and Christmas palms. Oh, and what are some of the other ones that, if you ever travel to Miami, are beautiful? Coconut palms, royal palms. They are all beautiful down in South Florida, in the Miami area. Many of them are almost guaranteed to freeze and die here and not do well in this area. We have plenty of others that are kind of in between. They can do well here, even though you're outside of their natural normal range. And then we have plenty of others to pick from that are very, very cold hardy. Cabbage palms, gosh, cabbage palms grow all the way up into South Carolina, I believe. So obviously the weather we get here is not going to bother them too much in the winter. So Linda says that her driveway is going to be dirt and not paved. That's probably a good idea anywhere near live oak trees, because that concrete, and gosh, I've had to help people in subdivisions where all the sidewalks are popping up and they're asking, what can we do? There's no really good solution to that. That was a lot of times they have to pay to have the trees removed, and then they have to pay to have the sidewalks reinstalled. and all that can get very, very expensive. So it's a really, really good example of planning, and good planning is really important before you start putting in things that are going to get really large over time. So Susan is trying to restart a school garden. Any tips on how to build soil? Make compost. Homemade compost is the best additive or amendment to soils long term, and it's the kind of thing that you have to keep doing and keep adding. Make more compost, add it, make more compost, add it. But right now she has soil from 1-year-old beds that need replacement. We use Black Cow. Now we have some natural compost. A lot of times you don't really have to dig out and remove and replace the soil. You just have to keep adding to it with the correct ingredients. So Black Cow works well. There are other brands of spent mushroom compost that works well. You may want to avoid the really, really cheap brands and bags of compost, especially if they're very heavy, they're very wet. If you open it a little bit or take a sniff of the bag and it smells really bad, that's not going to work really well, but Black Cow is a fine amendment. But if there's any way that you can keep making compost and adding compost from a variety of different ingredients, I've always found from my vegetable gardens that works the best. The only problem is it takes time. It takes time to make compost. It takes time to work it in and have it fully decomposed and mix with the sand. But once you get to that point, it makes a beautiful soil that you're going to be able to grow vegetables really, really, really well in. Joseph says, when do you harvest bananas? My first tree collapsed before I picked the bananas off of it. Bananas, as a general rule, you get the flower and you get the huge branch of bananas. Bananas rarely ripen on the plant, so it's not like you can leave them on the plant until they turn like grocery store yellow. A lot of times, though, the bananas can continue to grow larger once they size up and get to a good size, even though they're green. And especially if your banana got blown over by winds, damaged, the plant had a problem with a disease and the branch collapsed or fell off. If you take that huge bunch of bananas, and what I was told years ago, if you get a big paper bag, not plastic, but paper, and cover them, and hang it up in a dark closet, they'll start to ripen from one end and turn yellow, and you can pick them as they ripen, boom, 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 right up the branch. So a lot of times bananas are not going to completely ripen on the plant. You're going to pick them green and keep them indoors. In a dark spot is good. A dry spot, as low humidity and reasonable temperature as you can find. That's what we keep most of our houses at, so it's normally not a huge problem. So hanging them up and being replaced, or patient, they're going to ripen up and you're going to be able to pick them that way. That's how they finish up. So back to the live oak, she can go nearly 20 on one side, but only 15 on the other side. Obviously, I would suggest that 20 would be better, because the oak trees are not going to cause a problem today or tomorrow, or maybe not even for a year or two. But over time, live oaks and many other trees growing in Florida don't have a whole lot of really huge tap roots like they may up north. The majority of the roots are going to be very, very close to the surface. And oak trees, those roots that are at the surface and pop up above the surface and might become dangerous or difficult, like for your lawnmower or you tripping over, those are very, very important to the tree. You don't want to chop them off, and you don't want to bury them with soil or too much mulch, because that's how the tree gets a certain amount of gas exchange, and those roots need to stay near the surface. Very, very important for a healthy tree. If you start having to put yourself in a position where you're chopping a lot of surface roots off, 5, 10 years down the road, it's going to damage the tree and cause a lots of other tree problems that may lead to the death of the tree. So putting the driveway in a spot as far from those trees as possible and let them have as much room as they want for putting in those roots, and those surface roots is going to be best for the health of the oak trees. So let's see, what else do we have here? I see we have like 22 people watching us, so that's great, because that means that that's at least 22 people that probably have power or have internet, or maybe they're all just on here on their phones. You could do that also. So maybe hopefully you're not sitting in the dark with no air conditioning at the moment waiting to get your power back on. So that's great. So let's go ahead and get another question or two here. If we have anything. So Kathy says, thanks for the information. You're very welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in and asking questions. I'm always looking to learn. Her next goal is to study for the Master Gardeners program. If you live in Hernando County, we have Master Gardeners here. There are Master Gardener programs in just about every county in Florida. Not necessarily every last one. And some of them, like in the Panhandle, because they're so rural with small populations, they'll combine and have Master Gardener a multi-county Master Gardener program. But we have one here, and every county right around us has one also. So, Julia, are you really tuning in from Alaska? If you are, that's great. I think you win for farthest away from Hernando County for today. I really enjoy seeing people tune in, especially from all over Florida. And when you start asking questions like with a palm or something like that, if you can mention where you, like what town or what county you live in, it really helps me to give the correct information, because what you can grow in Duval County or Jacksonville is different from here and very different from Broward County or Homestead. So in order to give you the correct information, let me know where you live if it's outside of Hernando County. So Joseph has an avocado tree. It's about 4 years old. When should I expect some avocados? Avocado trees here in Hernando County, if they keep getting damaged by cold weather and kind of knocked back every winter, it takes them part of summer to kind of regain ground and grow back. So sometimes if it keeps getting seriously damaged every winter, it may be a lot of years before it flowers and gets avocados. If it's really not getting damaged back by cold winter weather, here it's going to take at least 4 years for it to get well rooted and settled and grow to the point where it's kind of outgrown its juvenile period and it's going to flower and get fruit. So if you bought it from a grafted tree or a small tree in, let's say, a 3-gallon pot 4 years ago, it should be flowering and getting fruit potentially soon. If you started the avocado from a pit, which a lot of people do, and you can grow a very attractive, nice looking avocado tree from a pit, it just takes a lot of years for it to get to the point where it's blooming and getting avocados on it. So if you started from a pit, it may take as long as 10 years up here in Hernando County. Down in South Florida, in Homestead, obviously that's different. Gosh, you could probably start an avocado tree from a pit in Homestead and have a flower and fruit in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, because they just grow all year long down there. They grow like weeds, and they're not going to stop growing in South Florida. Here in Hernando County, they pretty much stopped growing for the winter. So they go into kind of diapause, basically. They just sit there in a suspended state until spring comes around, then they start growing again. So for a native blueberry bush to fruit, if you're talking about a sparkleberry or something like that, it wouldn't take more than, I would think, maybe 2 years. because it's a native. It should be growing very quickly on your property. They don't have to get very large to start flowering and fruiting. If it's a domesticated variety, like one that you're growing, either a southern high bush or a rabbit eye blueberry variety that you're growing for edible blueberries for yourself, maybe 2 years. They don't take long to get settled in and established and start flowering. So here, let's kind of wrap up for the day with one last question here. And this is from Gail. And she is up there in North Jacksonville, up in Duval County. That's great. I assume that it's probably still at least raining there right now. Hopefully you didn't get any damage from the storm. But can you tell me how to dip up and transplant my white bird of paradise plant? It's about 20 feet tall. That's a big one with a bunch of pups. It's too close to my house. So if you wanted to completely remove and move something that large, you probably want to wait until spring to do that, because bird of paradise can get damaged by freezes and frosts, and you're farther north of here, so you're probably definitely guaranteed to get some cold weather this winter. So you're obviously going to have to dig up the entire plant, start with cleaning it up some and trimming off and removing any frozen and dead growth on it, because it's not going to come back and ever look any better. Go ahead and dig up the entire plant. The more root ball you leave on it, the better it is. Now, if it has a lot of little pups on it, you can dig off the individual pups and take them and transplant them somewhere else. You want to take them off with a sharp shovel, and you could take a shovel, whether it's a spade where it's straight across or a curved one, and if you have a file or a bench grinder, you can actually sharpen it, which is always a good idea. Sharp shovels go through the soil and whatever you're trying to dig up a lot easier. But if you take a sharp shovel, you can take it and slice off the pup. You need to make sure the pup has at least some leaves and as many roots on it as possible, and take those pups and plant them somewhere else. And then the main plant, you're just going to have to dig it up and dig a great big hole and remove it. Plant it at the same depth that it was growing at. Don't put it in deeper. You could put it in maybe an inch higher, and over time it's going to settle and end up at exactly the right depth. And then keep it really, really well watered after you transplant it, because it's going to take some time to grow new roots and have those roots spread and get settled in before it's able to take up a lot of water from the soil around it. So you're going to have to provide all the water it needs. So water it every day for a week or 2 or 3 or 4, however long it needs. Then you can go every other day, every 3 days. And it's going to be a good amount of work, because if it's 20 feet tall, that's a pretty big plant to be moving. So it's going to be some work. You need to get some friends over there to give you a hand. But it can be done. But I definitely wait until spring to do that. And really, if you can wait a little bit longer until the beginning of rainy season, the extra rain you get is really going to help to keep it from drying out. So you're not going to have to provide as much water as often if you're getting really, really regular rains. If you do it really early spring when it's really dry, you're going to have to go out there and diligently water it once a day, probably twice a day, starting off, and keep it well watered until it spreads its roots and becomes reestablished. So, quick weather update from up there in Duval County around Jacksonville. No damage, and yes, it's still raining. Yeah, it's not raining here, but it's getting cloudy again. So, hopefully it'll get sunny later on this afternoon and everything will perk back up and start growing again. So, gosh, guys, I think with that, let's go ahead and start wrapping it up here. Once again, if you ever want to find out about our upcoming classes and find information on who's going to be joining us next week for our virtual plant clinic, if you just go to hernandoextension.com, everything you need to know is right there. Here is our office's contact information. We are once again closed today, but we should be back open tomorrow. So feel free to give us a call with any of your lawn and garden and tree and plant and bird of paradise plant questions. And if you'd like to email me directly, there is my email. Please feel free. You can send pictures and other questions, and we'll get back with you, and we'll do our best to figure out exactly what the problem is and get it all answered for you. So, gosh, guys, thank you so much. When we're up to 25 people watching now, so much for it being a quiet day and nobody tuning in. I guess everybody still has electric and still has internet. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hopefully all of you will be back next week when I'll have my regular co-host Lily Browning with me. And hopefully our guest is going to be available to help next week, BJ Jarvis, who is a county extension director from Citrus County, is going to be here to help answer some more questions. So with that, thanks again. Everybody stay safe and take care, and we will see you again next Thursday at 10 a.m. See you then. Bye.